The next data type that we're going to cover are lists. Lists are data containers. It can contain anything. It can contain values, objects, functions, anything. Lists are defined using square brackets. So in this case, for instance, we can create a list of alterations, which we're going to use the square brackets to define. So in this case is a list of string objects. So the first alteration that I'm defining is potassic, and then city-citic, and then propylitic alterations. So if I run this, the list gets assigned to alterations, and we can visualize what alterations is by running that cell. Once the list has been defined, we can now access a list by index. So let's say I want to see what's the first alterations with index 0, and I want to access the alterations index 2. So if I print that on screen, the index 0, which is the first one, is going to be potassic, which matches the first one that I have defined. And index 1 I'm not showing, and I'm showing index 2, which is the third entry, which is propylitic. And that's what I get on the screen. Just like with strings, lists can also be sliced. So for instance, I can do alterations and slice the first two elements, which is going to be potassic and city-citic, or I can slice from the second one to the last element, which is going to be city-citic and propylitic alterations. Lists are mutable. That means that we can change the values of what is contained in that list. So for instance, if I access index 0 and I assign it to be now, say, potassic phase 1, and now take a look at the contents of my list, the first item have been changed from potassic to potassic phase 1. Like I mentioned for strings, everything in Python are objects, and objects have its own functions and methods. So in this case, lists also have its own methods. One of the most useful ones is append. With the append method, we can append new items to this list. So for instance, I can do alterations dot append and then add a new item, which I'm gonna call potassic phase 2. And now after doing that, if I run and see the contents of my alterations list, we have appended potassic phase 2 to the original list. Another useful method from lists is the dot sort. Dot sort will sort the objects within the list. So if I take a look at the result, now my list is sorted. Similarly to strings, we can also use the plus sign operator to append new items to the original list. So for instance, if I do alterations equals to or plus another list, which is argillic, and advanced argillic, and if we run this cell, and actually we'll see that the output of this code is the original alterations appended by this other list, which is argillic and advanced argillic. Other useful operations that we can perform on lists is, for instance, if we have to create a list of repeated elements like this one, we can use the multiplication operator to repeat this element on the list 3 times. So if I run this, I should get the same result. Note that we can do that for whatever element is in the list. So in this case, for instance, we can create a list of lists where the first element of that list is a list of 2 numbers, and the second element is the exact same list of 2 numbers. So in this case, if I run this, I get, of course, the list of lists where I have this repeated element. So if I do this element and I multiply by 2, I get the same result.